Alrighty, we're back. Smokified podcast,
True. Took a
and
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
you were about to say that we took a break. I was gonna
Exactly.
frame it that we didn't take a break.
A tactical break. That's
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're doing our year end here,
yeah.
and November and December lumped into one for year end.
I feel like they were slow months. I think it's fair to
Mhm.
wrap up. They actually weren't that slow.
They were not slow at all.
um, but yeah, we're back. We
We're
never left.
back.
We
We've
never
got
left.
big things to talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe a little late, but it's good to let things marinate.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
We get a fresh start for the new year and then we'll be set, you know.
yeah. hmm
It's cool. How are
Um,
you? How are
I'm
you?
good. I'm good. It's been a minute, but doing well. I'm excited to celebrate the holidays, celebrate the new year. How about you?
I'm good as well. I'm back in Phoenix, back in some warm weather, finally. So
I'm gonna be doing the opposite. I'm in
yeah,
San Diego still. I'm going to New York. It just snowed there, so
terrible,
it's gonna be cold.
terrible, terrible. But I got friends in New York, and I'm like, that's cool and all, but it's like if I gotta walk in 20-degree weather to get from like my house to the grocery store, I'm not gonna be happy. That's just
You,
a thought that I
you just
had.
go in the subway and then it's like hot and
Yeah.
steamy from all the rats.
I guess so. And then you just gotta dodge like homeless man piss the whole time, and then you're set. It's fine.
Hey, that's here too. So
Yeah, well, fair enough. I can't argue with that. But anyways, yeah, if you're new here, we're going to review a couple of albums, give you some high level points, talk about a couple things, and then slightly different wrap up today. We'll just kind of go over our year in music in general, and yeah, maybe just a couple other tidbits here and there. So should be a good episode. We got some great albums to talk about, some big releases. So
yes, some major things. Probably
yeah,
the most major being GNX by
yeah,
Kendrick, which
GNX
I think we
definitely.
get saved for the middle, but
Yeah,
um that you've got that to look forward to, I guess.
absolutely. So it'll be a good time. But yeah, I think we got four albums to go over. Do you wanna list off yours? List off mine.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'll list off the one that I'm doing separate from you first. I'm going to review Night Palace by Mount Eerie.
Nice.
Um, and then I think together we'll do a review of Chromacopia by Tyler, the Creator, and GNX by Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar, and then I'm going to review new Smino album called Maybe in Nirvana. Yeah,
But
solid
yeah,
list.
I forgot that you were going to review that. I've listened to it, have
Yeah,
some brief thoughts on it too, so maybe I'll add a little bit of that.
yeah. I'm excited for the Kendrick discussion though. I think that's
Yeah,
always
that'll be hype.
I got thoughts.
um,
And
yeah, I guess we can get started. Before we get started, hit the like, subscribe, the bell. I don't
yeah,
know what any of these
no,
things do. I know subscribe is good. We see a number that goes up.
yeah.
So,
That's the best part. That's the best
yeah.
part. That's what we
And
want.
you'll see us again next month. Or if
You will.
not, in 2 months, and we'll reframe it as though that is planned.
Yeah. Eventually, we'll start moving these to like fiscal quarter ends, and
Yeah.
then it'll be even more consumable content.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, subscribe, please. That'll
Yeah.
help us out.
More music reviews and
Yeah,
breakdowns.
for sure.
But
Yeah. Where do you want to start, Tate?
I could get started with mine. I'll start talking about Night Palace, and then if you want to get into Smino after that,
Yeah, sounds
cool.
great. Go for it.
All right, yeah. So my first review is of Night Palace by Mount Eerie. Let me switch this real quick to this. So Mount Eerie is it's really just one guy, this guy Phil Elfram, who is an experimental rock musician, noise rock, things like that. And he's kind of had quite a wild journey as far as a musical career goes, which I won't go into too much today, but you can definitely look into it. He's had some great albums over the years and pretty loyal fan base. I would say that I'm part of that fan base. Um, And yeah, Night Palace is just another great album by him. And I think a pretty noteworthy one. It's a double album, so lots of songs. And I feel like in some ways it's more enjoyable maybe to someone who's listened to his entire catalog before because it kind of feels like an amalgam of like all the sorts of sounds that he has been experimenting with his entire career, like in one album.
Mm.
But then also at the other end of things, a lot of his music can be kind of self-referential. He has a lot of songs that are like part two, part three, part four, um, and some are like very autobiographical. So you kind of have to know some things about his other music maybe to fully enjoy what's going on. Although I would say I think you can enjoy it without that knowledge as well. But this album is a little less like that. So I guess in other regards, maybe it is something that you could enjoy as someone who hasn't listened to the rest of his catalog in that way. Um, but yeah, couple things I wanted to point out about it. There's some interesting tracks like there's one on the latter end that's a 12-minute spoken word track which is
Oh,
kind of wild. But it was done really well, and actually probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. Um,
I feel like you're a long track guy. I
I
feel like
am a
you
long
listen to a
track
lot of
guy. I am definitely a long track.
yeah.
This guy is a long track guy. His last album, I think it was his last album. It was one song and it was 44 minutes long.
Holy shit. I think you told
So
me about that. I was like,
yeah,
wow, that's insane.
yeah. Um, and yeah, so it was cool and like he part of his sound is like very ambient music, I guess. So it fit the vibe. And he's kind of toyed with spoken word before, but this was like truly spoken word.
Mm.
Um, whereas like before it's been like like almost singing, like on the verge of singing and speaking.
Yeah.
Um, a couple other things I wanted to like mention that it was kind of cool that there's this one song. So he has like a, I think 4 year old daughter, I don't know, young daughter who like sings on one of the tracks and like I think he just had her scream into a microphone and then he like pitched it down. So
Oh yeah.
it truly sounded like a like talented like screamo singer
Oh wow.
but it was just like his daughter, which I thought was fun. Like it seemed like he was having a lot of fun with all the sounds, even if his music isn't always the most fun sounding. It's often like kind of introspective. Sometimes it's verging on sad. But there were brighter moments on this album too that were pretty cool. So like that, for example. But
Nice.
yeah, overall, a very good album. One other thing I wanted to say was that I got it on vinyl, which was fun.
Wow. Yeah.
One of the first like new releases that I've gotten on vinyl and have been able to listen to. And I think I mean, he's very independent, so he was putting the vinyl together himself. So it came with this huge poster of the album cover and like all the lyrics like written out and stuff. So yeah, that was pretty cool too.
Really cool little piece to have then. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, definitely I recommend this album if you're into noise rock. If you never heard of Mount Eerie, I would probably start with a different album by this guy. He went by The Microphones before this album, The Glow Part 2 is I think I had you listen to that album at one point. It's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah.
Um, but this one was solid too, so it's worth a listen. It's definitely very good.
Very cool. I think it's interesting that you said it's just like an amalgamation of all the different sounds that he's used before. I feel like that's kind of cool. But yeah,
Hmm.
nice to have the additional context before jumping into this probably. So
Yeah.
nice. Oh, that sounds great. Um, you got a favorite song on that one? Was it the 12-minute track?
It might be the 12-minute track. Demolition is the name of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's this song that came out like 2 or 3 years before the album. Maybe not that long. It felt like that long ago. Um, called Huge Fire. That like when he released it, it was on some compilation, like a fundraiser or something. and I listened to it and I was like, wow, this is so good. Like I wish this was like an actual release, or not an actual release, but like released as a single or on an album, and then it was on this album. So that was
Nice.
cool too.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
very cool. Nice. Any tracks you recommend staying away from for you?
Staying away from. I mean, also if you're like, wow, high praise, let me dive into something, maybe don't start with Demolition because it's
Right.
like, a 12-minute spoken word track. It fits
Experimental.
better in context of I think it's a 28 track album and it's like
Oh wow.
track 27 maybe is the spoken word track. So it's like after really getting into the vibe of the album, you're then presented with that, which is good, I think, but
Mhm.
yeah, maybe just starting it off with that, maybe not the right move.
28 tracks is lengthy. That is for
It
sure.
might not be that many, but yeah, it's close to that many.
Fair. Or the songs like relatively short, like the runtime is pretty standard, but
Yeah, I think standard for a double album, like maybe in the hour 10, hour 20 range or something.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's some songs like not all of them were 12-minute tracks. Like
Yeah.
there's a like that's the song that I mentioned that had his daughter on it. That might have been like a 30-second song or something. It was like very short.
Nice. Sounds good. All
Yeah.
right. Well, sounds like a solid release for you. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like I've been quite the downer on music releases lately, in our in our reviews. So it's nice having something that like I was excited about and then was also very good. So
Definitely. All right. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Appreciate the thoughts, Tate. Um, okay, well, with that being said, I will jump into my Smino review here. So I reviewed maybe a Nirvana by Smino. Smino is an artist that I've always kind of had an interest in. I think he first started releasing stuff. I guess his first official album was like 2016. So I've kind of been a fan since then. And I would say that like his sound has definitely evolved since he first started releasing music. I think at first it was very um, what's the word? Maybe like moody, very like atmospheric, kind of very like vibey. I don't even know how else to describe it. But yeah, like very laid back kind of style. And I think that he's still like maintained traces of that like through the years. But I think now he's like really trying to find his sound, which is good. And I think he takes some risks doing that. And I think more often than not, it pays off. So like his last album was called Love for Rent, which was 2022. I was a big fan of that album. And it had a lot of great features. It had a lot of great production. His flows were pretty unique. I think him and, one of my favorite artists, Isaiah Rashad, right? I think they're both pretty similar, not in terms of the sound that they have, but in terms of just like their ability and willingness to like experiment with new flows and new sounds and stuff. And so I think that's why I'm drawn to him. But yeah, I think overall this album was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I think it's definitely different from his previous ones. It was recorded during the pandemic, so definitely like a bit different of a time frame than some of his other stuff, which is interesting because this album has such a different sound than the albums that were released after the pandemic. But yeah, I like this album. It's definitely like less melodic. I think more focused on his rapping and like his ability to switch between flows. And the production is not quite as atmospheric or vibey. I think it's a little more aggressive, maybe. I don't even know if
mhm.
that's um but yeah, I thought all the features were really good. I think maybe the one feature that maybe was a little out of place. There was a Bun B feature on a song. Let me check what it was called real quick. It's called Miss Joyce. Thought that was a little out of place, maybe, but I mean Bun B is like he's a legend, so I get it. Always
Mhm.
cool to have someone like that on your album. It's a fun listen. I enjoy his storytelling. Um, that being said, I think overall it's definitely not as cohesive of an album as we've seen from him before. which is a little surprising also given that it's only 10 tracks. Uh,
Hmm.
so to me, the fact that it's 10 tracks and was recorded before the pandemic, that points to like another album coming soon.
Yeah.
So it kind of feels like an EP or like a little teaser. But that being said, like who fucking knows what these
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
think
feel
any
like it's impossible to know, which
yeah,
that reminds me of a point I'm gonna make with GNX later.
yeah,
Um, but given when it was recorded, I was thinking the same thing. Like I think he even said like it was just the sort of thing that he felt like he would be letting himself down if he never released this album.
right.
And it was just like stuff that he really loved.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's cool to see that he like polished up stuff that was, I guess, in the vault for a while and made an album out of it. Um,
And like I
it
think go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's nice hearing that you thought it was good and like you recognize that it wasn't like maybe his best, but like that it was still good. Whereas I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of the discourse I'm seeing online, and I'm much more outside looking in. I don't listen to Smino as often as you do or his fans do. But I enjoyed the album. I thought it was solid,
Yeah,
right? And like I feel like some people were like, this album isn't good. And like
right.
I wouldn't say that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I saw as well. And again, I think like because it is different
Hmm.
from stuff, I think that's why fans kind of lose their mind a little bit. But like,
Yeah, it can be shocking, I guess.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, again, he has such like a unique sound,
Hmm.
and I think people just get attached to that and they want more of it, which is totally understandable. But at the same time, it's like I don't know.
Artists have to grow and
Yeah,
try
exactly.
new things.
You can't expect an artist to release the same album 20 different times,
Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
that being said, yeah, I thought it was a good album. I think my favorite song on this album was Lee. Um, I think that's probably my favorite song of his. I don't want to say ever because it'll change, but like, but it's like it's one of
Right
my
now, at least.
yeah, yeah. And I think that gives you like a taste of kind of what his previous work is like. So like if you want, kind of an idea of what his sound is like and kind of his melodic style, like a little more like auto-tune pop adjacent kind of sound, I think that's a good song to start with. And then you can definitely jump into his other albums as well. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely like I think if you think of it more as like, you know, again, like recorded during the pandemic, like you're just cranking out music probably, and so like more of like a compilation album, I would think,
Hmm.
or even like a cohesive like extended release. So from that perspective, I think it's pretty good, and I think it's like a fun listen. Definitely, I think it's for sure his least popular release, which is a
Hmm.
little unfortunate, but I get it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that there's more to come soon. So
Cool. Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe next year.
yeah, that is for sure. So yeah, I'm hoping. I think like honestly, I think overall 2024 was a pretty slow year in rap. I mean, it ramped up a little bit towards the
Hmm.
end. But I think overall there weren't that many big releases to talk about. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean Kendrick just dropped. I'm assuming Drake will drop. That'll be it. That'll definitely be something. So um
Yeah, we'll have more to talk about for sure.
we'll have plenty more to talk about. We already have so much to talk about today.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
Yeah, maybe we should keep going.
yeah, let's
First, unless did you have any more thoughts that you wanted to say real quick?
no, not really. I'm excited for what's to come. That's
Yeah.
really it. So,
Well, good.
yeah, should we transition into GNX here?
Should we quickly talk about Chromacopia first, maybe?
You want to do that? Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
that.
I feel like we could run through that quicker probably and then save a big chunk for
Okay.
GNX if needed. But yeah, I think we both listened to Chromacopia. I don't know if we ended up listening to it about the same amount, but yeah, the newest album by Tyler, the creator. It's interesting. He's billing it, I think, as like his eighth album, but it's like I don't think it is his eighth. I don't know what he's counting as, whatever. But
Hearing like odd future stuff is like
maybe, yeah, I don't know,
maybe
or maybe like a mixtape or something. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I'll just start, I guess, with my thoughts on it. I thought it was a pretty solid release by him, but it just wasn't my personal favorite. That's kind of the general thoughts I had of the album. But at this point, I kind of feel like Tyler has really established himself as having like a distinct style and sound that like is undeniably him. This like kind of almost like progressive jazz rap sound. And it's also usually very high quality, anything he puts out, and this is no exception to that. And if I were to make like an analogy to movies, I feel like his albums are like Wes Anderson films, and
Mm,
this album in particular just like wasn't my favorite film by him.
yeah.
Um, but that said, there's definitely things that I can respect about it. Like I like how focused the theme was. It reminded me. I think other people have made this comparison, but it reminded me a lot of actually Kendrick Lamar's last album, Mr. Morale, because it was kind of just like a big therapy session.
Yeah.
It's what I've been calling dad rap. It's hip hop in place of going to therapy.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it makes for some nice, I think, really interesting lyrical moments mixed with good hip hop. And so like there are a couple tracks that like I'll definitely be coming back to, like Take Your Mask Off, I think is one of the highlights of the album.
Mm.
Um, and kind of fits that vibe. So yeah, those were my general thoughts. I don't know. What did you think about the album, Sammy?
Yeah. So I think we differ in that I think you generally like what Tyler puts out. For
Yeah.
me, I'm not quite there. I think
Uh-huh.
like I can respect like the artistry. I think he does a good job with what he puts out. It's all high quality, like you said, but it's like I don't know. I'm typically not a huge fan of his work. I think his voice at times can get a little grating. I do like some songs that he'll release,
Hmm.
but I think I find his albums like a little difficult to get through. Um, overall, I thought this was like a fine album. I wasn't
Hmm.
like overly impressed. Um, what I did think was interesting, like I mean, you probably noticed this as well, that the production was kind of off the wall for me.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It was very aggressive for sure. Not necessarily in a bad way. I think some
Hmm.
tracks than others. But yeah, it was very unique, and I can respect that.
Hmm.
I think his rapping ability is also top notch. But I felt like some songs, because of maybe because of the production or maybe because of his flows, just didn't feel harmonious at
Hmm.
all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's definitely some like off the walls moments. Like I think Sticky was one of the songs. I don't know if you had a
Yeah.
note about that one, but that was like kind of a wild track that the production was kind of aggressive, and then like there's just like a million features, some that were really cool. And I liked how like hype it was trying to be, but I don't know that it like completely worked for me.
Mhm. That's fair. I mean, Sticky actually was one of the songs I
Yeah, okay.
enjoyed.
Yeah.
Another note I have here is just like the features overall on this album, I think were the highlight to me. Like there were
Hmm.
a lot of them, but I
Yeah.
think all of them were pretty like solid. I mean,
Hmm.
Daniel Caesar I thought was really good.
Yeah, he
Lil
was all over
Jon,
the album.
yeah, and Schoolboy Q really good. Doechii had a really good feature as well. So
Hmm.
I thought the features were kind of the highlight for me. But yeah, I just didn't think like it has a ton of replay value. Like it was a
Hmm.
fun listen, but like
Yeah.
if I could play anything I wanted for fun, like this would not be at the top of the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I would I mean, I think it attempts to be fun, but then a lot of the lyrics, I guess, aren't necessarily fun lyrics. So I agree with you on the replay value too. I mean, I have not come back to it that much. Like, and I remember his last album, which I don't know if you listened to, Call Me If You Get Lost. That's probably my favorite album by him.
Mm,
Um, but I was replaying it like over
yeah,
and over again after it came out. Um, this one, it's like, okay, I'll listen to a song like Take Your Mask Off or Ratata, like songs like that. I'll listen to still, but like the rest of the track list, I haven't really come back to. So I
yeah,
agree on the replay value
yeah.
point.
That's pretty much where I'm at as well. Yeah, it felt to me it was like I like the movie analogy
Hmm.
because there are some movies that you're told that you should like,
Hmm.
and this felt like an album that I was told I should like, and I just did not
Yeah.
really mess with it as much
Uh-huh.
as maybe other people did.
Yeah.
So, Anyways, but that being said, there were a couple songs that I thought were really good. Thought I Was Dead
Hmm.
had Schoolboy Q and Santa Gold on it. I thought that was cool. Saint Chroma with Daniel Caesar was really good, and then
Hmm.
Stick Balloon I thought were also good songs as well. Uh,
Nice.
but yeah, again, I'm not like necessarily coming back to them all the time, but I thought they were good tracks. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention was there's another album that I got to listen to on vinyl because I ordered it
Oh, nice.
pre-order. And they did something kind of interesting that I feel like a hardcore Tyler fan would be more into than I was. Like, I definitely really like Tyler and I'm always paying attention to what he comes out with, but like, I think there are probably people who would have liked the vinyl release better than I did. And I'll explain why. So, a couple things that were really cool. One was like they had a number on each vinyl, like which number you got, because they only put out maybe like 100,000 of them.
What?
So like, mine was, I don't remember the number, but it was like 77,000 something, so
Yeah.
that was cool. Also, the album artwork was different. Not better, which which is part of I guess my thoughts on the vinyl was like I didn't realize they didn't completely explain it when you bought it, but they marketed it as like something like the test pressing or something or first pressing something like that. And essentially it was like the working copy of the album. It was like the unfinished version of the album. So there are verses that aren't finished. They're kind of just like placeholder verses. There's even like a song that switched out for another song in the latter half of the album. The
Mm.
production is like the mastering, it sounds like a little bit louder and more distorted. So there's things that are like not completely polished, and then like the artwork as well, it's just like plain green. um
Mm.
which so like it just kind of feels like I'm listening to the work in progress version of the album, which if you are like a huge fan of Tyler and this album, that probably is really cool. But for
Right.
me, who is like, not my personal favorite by him, like it was solid but probably won't keep coming back to it. I'm definitely not going to keep coming back to the work in progress version of it as much.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, I get that's tough because like yeah, definitely like if you're a big fan, like that's
yeah,
probably cool, like kind of a unique
right.
aspect to it. But like if you just want
I
a vinyl to listen to, then it's like
right.
well now I'm kind of out of luck.
I do appreciate that they did this though, even though I'm like I listen to it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's worse than what I heard on
Does it
Spotify.
does it not feel like a bit lazy to you? It's like I
I
don't
don't
know.
think so. I mean, like, yes, I guess they could release this on vinyl the typical way, but I think given that um the vinyl is like physical media and like no one else has this other than
Mm,
people who bought it, I think that's still cool and like
yeah,
there's value to that. So,
yeah, that's good.
um, yeah,
Fair.
I see we are running out of time, which is the name of a Tyler the Creator song. So maybe we should keep moving on to GNX. If
Yeah.
we have to, we'll plug another like 10 minutes of another meeting on. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's wrap up Chromacopia, move right on to GNX.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Do you wanna start with your thoughts, or I can start as well.
Sure, I can start. So GNX, newest album from Kendrick Lamar, probably like the biggest moment ish of hip hop in the year. I mean, there's the big feud between Drake and Kendrick, and I know you have thoughts on this being a big Drake fan.
Right.
I would consider myself a big Kendrick fan,
Right.
but I didn't really get wrapped up in the beef that much. I'm kind
Yeah.
of not a big, I'm not interested in beef, to be honest.
You're not as chronically online as
that
maybe or other people.
that's debatable. I might be chronically online, but but
Just different corners of the internet, though.
yeah, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. So this was kind of the culmination from like the Kendrick side of the beef, I guess. And yeah, just a surprise drop, which is also really kind of cool. And my thoughts generally, it was a solid album, but also maybe his worst since Good Kid, Mad City, or since before Good Kid, Mad City. Good
Yeah.
Kid, Mad City is like one of his best. Um, but you know, I feel like people are like talking about this like it's as good as one of those albums, and I'm just like, it's
You
not. It's
you don't
not.
think you
It's just
don't
not that good. It's do I like it? Sure. It's a good album. I would give it like 3 out of 5 if I were to rate it, right? But like I would give those albums 5 out of 5, right?
yeah.
Like I
See, in the industry tape, they call that glazing. They call it
yeah,
glazing. People are glazing, and that's
there's some
okay.
glazing going on here.
Insane.
Um I'll say this, and I know you've got thoughts, so we can get into that. I thought the first 3 tracks were fun. Um a couple other tracks too I liked. Reincarnated, I liked a lot. Gloria, I thought was good. Reincarnated was interesting because I saw some people hating on the song. Like I forget if it was a New York Times review or a Pitchfork review, but they straight up called it unlistenable. And I was like,
Wow.
to me, it was one of the highlights. I thought it was good. And there were songs that I was like, this is annoying. Like Man at the Garden, I think. Like I
Hmm.
feel like he's done that kind of like dramatic ramp up song. He's done that before on like his last album, for example. And I was like, I just don't really care this time around. And it's like so like self aggrandizing too, which I kind
Hmm.
of find annoying after a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, a lot of the track list is kind of forgettable for the rest of it. And we
Yeah.
can get into this too later, but it also sounds very commercial at times to me. But
Yeah. I
anyways,
think.
I'll let you pop off.
Yeah. I think you covered a lot of what I wanted to say as well. But yeah. I will say when I first listened to this album, I was not impressed. I think again, Kendrick sets a pretty high bar, so it's not difficult to be disappointed, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he sets a high bar, so I can understand that. When I first listened to it, I thought it was like I just didn't understand what it was trying to do. I think it tried to be like a more laid back, like fun album that he
Mm-hmm.
wanted. I just didn't. I just don't feel like that's his. I just don't feel like that's his strong suit. To be
Mm-hmm.
honest, I think. That being said, over the course of time, I think I like it grew on me for sure. At
Okay.
least the songs did. Um, but again, like the songs that did grow on me, like I'll go back to them. But the
Yeah.
songs that I didn't really think that were that interesting, like I had zero interest in
Mm-hmm.
them again.
What were
So
some of those songs, for example, like ones you liked or didn't like?
yeah, so I mean, ones I liked, like all of the like more, I don't want to say like club type songs, but a little more energetic songs, like Squabble Up is a great
For
song.
sure.
Black Out Murals I thought was pretty good. There's a song called Hey Now,
Mm-hmm.
um, which has a Dodie Six feature, who I didn't know who that was, but I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was the best feature on the album.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big fan of that. But like some of the more, Reincarnated, I actually didn't think was great, to be
Okay.
honest. Um, part six, I thought was kind of forgettable.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, considering that like line of songs is pretty great.
Yeah. It's funny
Luther,
because what
yeah,
you've mentioned, some of the songs, I mean, I like Squabble Up, but some of the other songs that you've mentioned, I didn't like as much.
right,
But then
yeah,
Reincarnated and Heart Part 6, I did like.
yeah. But again, I think that just goes to like our
Different
difference in taste,
preferences.
right? Yeah. So, but that being said, like Luther with SZA, I thought that was a really good song. I like that one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think in the context of what has happened this year, this was a pretty disappointing album because um, I don't know, the whole beef was such a fucking mess. And then if you're gonna drop a surprise album, that's great. That's great. But it's like if after all this, right, you're taking shots at the other biggest rapper in the game, I expect you to drop like kind of a classic album at that point. You know what I mean? Like you're doing all
Yeah.
this and like let's see what you got.
Yeah. And I
And then
think
it felt like,
people wanted it to be that.
yes,
And
exactly.
I think it had enough great moments that people were like, it is that.
Yes, yes. And I just don't think it was. Like I can
Hmm.
understand why people wanted it to be that, but it just wasn't.
Yeah.
And um yeah, and then at the same time he's taking shots at Drake and it's like, I mean, I get it. Like, I get it. But it's like
Hmm.
like this is what we got. I don't know. Especially again, he sets the bar so high. So it's like
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
just
it
expect
was like, I think back to, I guess it's even just the concept of framing an album maybe around a beef, which I don't know that he really did. Like, there are moments where it's obviously referenced like that he's talking about the beef or talking about his position in hip hop in general. But
mhm.
I guess like I when I think of his greatest work, I don't think about him as like a beef artist, you know? I think of
Yeah.
him making a grand statement about art or the world, you know?
Mm.
I'm not saying you have to do that every time, but that did result in some of his best works. So
Yeah,
I don't know, you know?
for sure.
Um, and yeah, I had something else I was gonna say, so maybe you go ahead. I gonna have
Yeah.
to think about that.
Well, I mean, just one thing I wanted to touch on was like, Kendrick's discography is very impressive. That
Hmm.
being said, I think over the years, I think we're seeing a decline in quality here, to be honest.
Hmm.
And like, you know, I don't think that's his fault. I think that's just naturally what happens when one, you're that successful, and then
Hmm.
two, like you just run out of shit, like meaningful stuff to talk about. Like I get it. But like, his first what 3, 2, I mean, we can
Yeah,
debate.
yeah, yeah. I know you don't like Damn. I love
Yeah,
Damn,
damn,
but
damn is a pretty mid album in my opinion, but that
yeah,
album, we can talk about that another
that's
day.
that's beef from years ago.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just like Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Like I haven't gone back to that
Yeah,
album, and I
yeah.
thought it was an interesting take.
It was a lot like Chromacopia in
Yeah.
that like it had great moments and the lyrics were interesting, I thought. But yeah, I think some of it isn't maybe as memorable as maybe some of his other work.
Yeah.
I think something I wanted to note, and I realize we only have 1 minute left, so I'll try and maybe wrap it up, make it quick. But like, I feel like some of what I'm seeing in his music is the comparison between I, the single, and I, the album version.
Mm.
I, the single, is like so commercial, polished, and like, I don't know, something about it just doesn't feel
It was
fun.
made for the radio
It was
album.
made for the radio. And
Yeah.
this album, it feels like it was made for a purpose that wasn't like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just was missing something and ended up sounding like a little bit lame because
I
of
don't
that.
think it was as gritty as it wanted to make itself out to
Yes.
be. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like it
Mm-hmm.
felt a little too clean or a little too
Yes.
pretty.
Yeah.
So I get what you're
Agreed.
saying.
Agreed.
But yeah, overall, fine album, but left little to a lot more to be desired.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And oh, that was the thing was that people were saying, "Oh, this is just the first album." That's usually a sign that like,
Cope.
all right, that's Cope. It's Cope. This was not just the first album. And maybe he has something, but it's not like he had something ready, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, our last meeting wrapped up in
Yeah.
perfect timing. So,
Okay.
anyways, we're gonna transition now into just general year-end thoughts for what, like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, talk about our wrapped, talk about anything we missed, what we're
Yep.
excited for. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your wrap? Do you want to start with yours?
Yeah. I'm
Spotify wrapped, that is. I guess
yeah.
any music service has this too.
Yeah, that is
But
true. My wrapped was extremely basic, which I'm a little embarrassed by, but I think again, that's why I like doing this podcast is because it forces me to listen to new music. But yeah, my top five artists were extremely predictable. Number one was Drake. I'm pretty sure every year that Spotify Wrapped has existed, Drake has been my number one artist.
yeah, I think I forget if you texted this to me, but you said something like, "Will Drake ever not be number one?"
Yeah, yeah, I don't know, and it's not even like it's not like I go out and
Yeah, like you don't
it,
seek him out necessarily.
but it does pop up on shuffle a lot, and like
Hmm.
I'm not gonna turn it off because like I like it, right? So number two was Future, three was Travis Scott, four was Gunna, five was Metro Boomin. Metro Boomin had two albums this year, so did a lot
Yeah.
of listening to that. Um, So yeah, pretty basic stuff. I think these are like all very within my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think. I think Gunna maybe a bit of a newer addition. I didn't really listen to a lot of Gunna before, but I do think in like the last like 2, 3 years, he's really like refined his sound a lot. And I think
Gotcha.
that it's interesting because like he and Lil Baby, another Atlanta rapper, very like intertwined. But Lil Baby for a long time was a lot more popular. I
Hmm.
think that's like flipped. I think Gunna is a lot more popular now, and Lil Baby is kind of like I don't know. It's honestly he hasn't released a lot lately, so it's kind of I don't know, kind of waiting on that. But yeah, I don't know. I think his sound has gotten a lot better. I think his rapping ability has gotten a lot better. And I guess that's just what happens when you go to jail. So fair enough. But yeah, I was a top 0.5% fan of Drake, which is
That
insane.
is insanity.
I think I should see a doctor.
Yeah, seek
Might
help.
seek health, touch craft. Um, my top songs were Down With Me by Lil Tecca. I've listened to
Hmm.
a lot of Lil Tecca this year. What Would Pluto Do by Drake. That was from his last album, For All the Dogs. I thought that was a really good song. It's one of my favorites of his. Cinderella by Future, Metro Boomin, and Travis Scott. That was on Metro Boomin's first album of the year. That album kicked off the whole like Drake Kendrick beef, which is
Hmm.
really in hindsight.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
that's how little I pay attention to the beef. I like forgot, and even J. Cole was involved with that, right?
J.
And like
Cole. Yeah, J. Cole was involved, but he also wasn't. He kind of
he
wussed
he
out a little bit, which
yeah,
I can understand, but it's like
yeah.
um other last two songs were Fast Life by Geely, which is like a house song. I listened to a lot of house music this year, which is very.
Oh,
And then the last one is Atmosphere by Fisher, which is another like house EDM artist.
gotcha.
So I did a lot of house and EDM listening this year, which is
That's cool. Is that new?
I like the disc. I like the variety, I guess. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
new. Sure. But it's like it also makes sense because like I love nice noises and that's all house. So
All nice noises.
yeah, for sure. But yeah,
Nice.
that's pretty much my rap. So what about you, Tate?
Yeah, let me go
Actually,
through my Wrapped.
do you have the number of minutes you listen to? Let me
Yeah,
see.
I have 25,000 minutes, which I think is much less than you, if I remember
I
correctly.
I think I was at like 48,000,
Yeah,
44,000, something
which
like
is
that.
very impressive. I guess I don't really I listen in the car and sometimes when I work. So like
Hmm.
I don't drive that much. If I was
Okay.
driving more and if I was listening all the time when I worked, maybe I'd be
Yeah,
listening more. So,
that's fair.
but yeah, I'll go through mine. Top artists. Number one, Vampire Weekend. Not very
Classic.
surprising.
No.
Number two, Charlie XCX. Also not very surprising if you know that I loved Brat.
Right.
Number three, this one I'm embarrassed by, but it's my own music.
No.
I think so. You were asking me like how does that even happen? So first it started out with like when when I released my album back in May, I just wanted to listen on Spotify to see because they add like some compression. I was like, all right, let me see
Can
how
you
it
before we go on, can you plug yourself real quick? We
plug myself. Oh
plug
yes,
yourself. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
my artist name is Morning Modern.
Yeah.
Mour morning, not typical morning. I had to look at the artist name to know how to spell that for sure because I can't do
What's the
that off the
album
top of
called?
my head. And the name of the album was Shipwreck.
All right. You go
Yeah.
listen to that, please. But yeah, all right. Continue.
um, but yeah, I wanted to see how it sounded differently from like the files I had on my phone. And then I just ended up listening a lot because I was enjoying listening to it. But at a certain point, I was like, one, I would only like listen because I was listening a lot when I was working on the album leading up to it. So then I just kind of got in the habit of like just listening to the album all the way through, thinking of my own thoughts and thinking, okay, for my next project, what do I improve on? Stuff like that.
Right.
Um, but like I usually get embarrassed by my own music. So like this is not music showing up in like my playlist. I'm like, oh, this is a banger, and I'm having this on at part. Like, no, like Muriel. Sometimes my girlfriend she listens to my music and it'll show up in like her Discover. She has
Right.
YouTube Music, so whatever they call it there.
That's-
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but she'll sometimes a song by me will like come up in one of her playlists and like we gotta skip this. I can't be listening to this.
Yeah, no, that's
But
fair.
anyways,
I
that
mean,
was my number
I
three.
think it's pretty reasonable for you to have your own music in your top five. I
Yeah,
don't think it's kind of
it's a
sick.
little
Yeah,
funny.
I think I think it's cool. I get it,
Yeah.
but yeah, but,
Um but yeah, and then four was the Smile. I talked about them in October.
mm.
And five was the Smashing Pumpkins, which I guess the closest artist to me for you for Drake, like your Drake is my Smashing Pumpkins probably. Like
Is it not
they
Vampire
just
Weekend?
Vampire Weekend I don't think shows up in my top artists year after
Okay.
year.
All right.
Smashing Pumpkins shows up in my top artists year after year.
All right. But
And
like
like
Vampire Weekend is like arguably your favorite, right?
probably my favorite, yeah. And like maybe eventually they will also be in my top five year after year. I don't
So
know, especially if they keep releasing albums like the one they did this year, which is
I re-listened to that album. It's a great album, by the way.
it's great.
I
It's
really
so
enjoyed it.
good. I have had like some changing thoughts on it. Like it isn't my favorite by them, and I don't think it's their best, but
Mhm.
it's really good. It's
It's
still
really
really
good.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
It gives you
but
exactly what you want from a Vampire Weekend album,
yes.
I think, which
Mm-hmm.
is impressive. I feel
Yeah.
like that rarely happens
Mm-hmm.
these days, so I can definitely respect that.
On that point, my top songs are Capricorn by Vampire Weekend, Classical by Vampire Weekend, Hope by by Vampire Weekend, and Mary Boone by Vampire Weekend are my top four. And
Wow.
then five is Von Dutch by Charlie XCX.
Nice. Very fair. Very fair. That's great.
um, but but yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I didn't talk much about Brat at all because we kind of started our new monthly recap idea after Brat came out. But yeah, one of my favorite albums of the year, which like literally I have not listened to Charlie XCX before Brat. I just like heard that it was a good album and people I like hyperpop from other hyperpop that I've listened to. So I was like, yeah, let me try out probably arguably the biggest hyperpop artist. And then like just from the first listen, I was like, yeah, this was good. And then it only grew on me from there. Um,
And now it's something I would be interested in because like I first heard of Charlie XCX in like 2014.
mhm.
Did Fancy with Iggy Azalea,
Fancy with Iggy Azalea. Yeah.
and I did not hear about her for
Well,
like
she's had a couple hits
almost
here and
10
there, like what's the one like I Don't Care. I
yeah,
crashed my car into a bridge. Yeah.
yeah,
And then Boom Clap was also
yeah,
like those are like some of her earlier hits. And then I feel like she started doing like some experimental stuff that wasn't that like radio friendly for a
right.
while.
Well,
And
that's
then
my question then is like, well, first of all, have you listened to that? And then like,
right.
if you have, like, what did you think?
I
And
haven't fully explored yet. I went
yeah,
back two albums to I think it was called How I'm Feeling Right Now. And that album I really liked. That was kind of more strictly hyper pop and like it reminded me of like 100 Gex a little bit, maybe more pop than crazy. But yeah, there's some good songs on that album. And then I have not yet listened to Crash, which was the album between that album and Brat, and she billed that as her sellout album, where she just like
mm,
did radio hits and whatnot. Um, and I've only recently, like literally within the past few days, heard the song Crash because it was in our music league. And I loved it. It was so good.
yeah,
So yeah, I'll probably check out that album at some point. But and some of those earlier hits, like I'm like okay on them, but
yeah.
I really like Brat. I think it was a
That's
solid
fair.
album, so I'm definitely gonna be paying attention to her from now on.
Yeah, I was just so surprised by like the random like boom in popularity. Again,
Hmm.
people being chronically online and like TikTok trends and all that, but it's like still
Yes.
like not, I don't know. It's easy to have a song pop off on TikTok, but like people
An
really want the
album
album, you know what
with
I
like a
mean?
dance craze and
Yeah,
everything. Yeah, yeah,
exactly. Like I could think of plenty of TikTok songs and I've never heard of that artist again. So like
right. Hmm.
so
Yeah, it was kind of like a victory lap, multiple victory laps all year for her, which
yeah,
is pretty
seriously.
cool.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah.
Well, how did you describe the album?
What,
I think you
Brat?
you sent me like a music video to watch, and I was like, I do
Oh,
not
right. I
understand
sent
what.
you 360, which you said
Yeah,
chronically online.
yeah,
That music video is for people who are chronically online.
yeah. Tate, Tate sent me that video, and I watched it, and I was like, this makes me feel like I don't know anything about women, and I was like, I do not understand what's happening right now.
So I showed the music video to Muriel, and she also was like, what's going on here?"
All right, that makes me feel a little
I
better.
think you need to like she didn't know oh, no, she knew who Rachel Sennett, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name is. She knew who that person was,
Mm,
that actress from the movies that we've seen. But like she didn't recognize Julia Fox, for example, who's in
mm,
the music video and some other people.
right.
And like the top comment on the music video is like, this is an incredible music video for people who are chronically online.
Okay. That's what it felt like because I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I do not know what's happening. I felt like I
Yeah.
was in a Twitter thread that like I just did not belong in.
Yes, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But yeah,
But
this was a fun video for sure. But I was like, all right, well, not for me maybe, but
yeah.
yeah, nice.
Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
what?
I have like I make a playlist every year of two songs by like artists that I generally care about or am interested in. So I'm like scrolling through that right now. Just like quickly some other artists that I'd like to shout out from this year.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Adrienne Lenker came out with a great album. She's the lead singer of Big Thief. Really awesome, just singer songwriter music. Definitely would check that out. Beyonce's new album was good. I don't usually, I mean, I know I just went off about Brat, but I don't usually listen to pop, and it
Mhm.
was just a solid like country pop album. Um, Schoolboy Q came out with his album that was good. Billie Eilish came out with a solid album. There's this band from Cleveland actually, and I think the lead singer went to Case and then dropped out. We're both Case alumni. Fun fact.
Yeah.
Um, Cloud Nothings is the name of the band. They're from Cleveland, and they're like one of my favorite like rock bands. And they came out with an album this year, and it
Hmm.
was good. Solid album. Let's see what else. Idols came out with an album that was good. Yardak came out with an album that was good. And oh, I wanted to mention The Cure came out with an album that was good, which is wild because like they've been around for 40, 50 years and
Mhm.
then they released something that was good and like people cared about. Like that's hard to do when you're that far into your career.
Yeah.
Um and finally there's this artist Toy Bastard who's like the guitarist for Car Seat Headrest, who we've talked about this on this podcast before, and
Hmm.
his album was good. And I feel like it's like getting no streams. Like, well,
Oh,
not no. I shouldn't. I don't
yeah.
want to downplay it, but like for how good it is, it should be getting way more streams. I think. I think it was a really solid album. So,
Nice. Nice.
anyways,
I like the shout outs. That's good. Um, yeah, I'm looking through kind of what I've been listening to like over the last year. I'm on Last FM. I'm looking at my most played albums over the last 365 days. Uh, a lot of Drake albums in the top 10, so I will
classic, of
we'll talk
course,
about that. Huh?
of course, of course.
Yeah, it's not great. Trying to see what else. Plan A by Little Tecca. I reviewed that a couple months ago. That was a
Hmm.
really good album, I thought. Again, not like not gonna blow your mind, but a fun listen, and I really like the production on that one. Listened to a lot of K Tronada this year as well. He had a new album that I thought was pretty good. Again, won't give you anything, a new K Tronada album, whatever you're looking for out of that. I think it'll give you exactly what you need there. An artist I wanted to shout out was Haley Knox, and you and I have talked about her a good amount because I've been a little obsessed with her music. Um, but she has like one full-ish length album, maybe an EP, out right now. But it's really interesting. She's a really interesting artist to me because like she started as like a classic like indie like folk-ish pop-ish type artist, and now she's like transitioned into this like R&B like pop type of style, which is really good, and I think she does a lot of the production herself, which is always like really cool to see. So very much looking forward to whatever she puts out next. What else? And then of course there's a lot of house music on my list as well. Which is cool. I again I love the production of that, and it's like it's just easy to listen to be honest. Like you don't have to think about it too much. Other albums that I listen to a lot. I listened to there's a J. Cole album called Might Delete Later. I listened to that album a good amount. I'm typically not a huge J. Cole album fan, to be honest. That one I thought was pretty impressive.
Is
Um,
that one of his older
no,
albums?
I think he
No,
released it this year.
oh,
If not,
oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
it was
It's a
very like
mixtape from this year. Yeah.
it's a very like under the radar kind of release.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah.
I'm looking on Wikipedia. I don't know this website, Sputnik Music. I've seen the name a couple times. They gave it point 0.5 out of 5. Was it
Oh,
that bad? No.
I
I
mean,
can tell you without listening to it. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that, but
that's insane. 0.5 out of 5 is crazy work.
yeah. I
No,
usually
I
like
thought it was
J.
pretty good.
Cole well enough, so maybe I should check that out.
But again, it's a compilation album. It's not an album. So
Mhm.
you have to kind of
Yeah,
front,
yeah.
you know. Both Metro Boomin albums got a lot of play. Metro Boomin also a Drake op, but the production is top notch, so I can't stay away from that. Uh, and then there's a lot of albums that just year after year just get a lot of replay out of me. Obviously, like a lot of Drake albums do, but pretty much every Metro Boomin album gets a lot of play for me. Every Isaiah Rashad album gets a lot of play. And then lately a lot of SZA as well, 21 Savage too. So um,
Which SZA, speaking of, have we mentioned yet that she
no, we
just
haven't.
came out with a re-release of some sort, deluxe version, I don't know, of
Yeah.
SOS 2 days ago, which I haven't listened to. I don't think you've listened to yet, but that, I mean, we talked about SOS on this podcast, so
Yeah, and we looked at the track list, and it's 38 songs long.
too
So
many songs, too many
too
songs.
many songs. You can honestly ignore, I mean, not ignore necessarily, but like 23 of those songs are basically SOS. So like
Well,
50 new
I'm
tracks, the whole
confused because
album basically.
I briefly looked at the track listing and it looked a lot different. I don't know if maybe it was just like the front of the track listing is the new stuff.
Yeah, I think so. That's what it looked
Okay.
like to me.
Then yeah, maybe I wasn't paying hard enough attention, but I was thinking that maybe it was like reinterpretations of songs or
Mhm.
something. But yeah, you're probably right that it's just front loading the new stuff. And
Yeah, we
then
have to look closer as well. But yeah, it looked like the first portion of the track list was like the newer stuff. So
yeah.
which makes sense. So but yeah, that'll be a fun listen. And then of
Hmm.
course, in terms of other stuff I'm looking forward to in 2025, I need a Drake album, unfortunately. I know I keep saying his name, but
Will
after
be in your
everything that has
number one
happened,
spot yet again.
after everything that has happened, I just need to see what he's gonna say. And like he
Hmm.
has not released any new music since the beef and all
Yeah.
that. And I think that's smart. Um, but man, I cannot wait because like honestly, like again, people give Drake a lot of shit. I
Hmm.
get the jokes and I get it, but it's
Yeah.
like the dude can rap, like you know what I mean? Like when he goes at people, like he really goes at them. Like he pretty much fucking ended Meek Mill's career. Like we don't even hear about him anymore. You know what I mean? Um, Lost to Pusha T. I will concede that. But at the same time, it's like you can't win a beef if you're gonna hide a child from the world. It's just not gonna happen. It's just not gonna
Yeah.
happen. Anyways,
You're a brave man admitting, you're not only admitting but defending Drake
I
to this day.
here's the thing is like sometimes and I do this with basketball players a lot too. Like there's a lot of basketball players that just get clowned on relentlessly. LeBron's son, Bronny James, gets clowned
Hmm.
on constantly. Jordan Poole, who's like basically a crackhead playing basketball, also gets clowned on a lot. But like to me, I'm like, they might not be perfect basketball players. Nobody is. But like if they got no fans, I'll be a fan. I got no problems with that. And it's the
Hell
same thing
yeah.
like Drake. Drake has been getting shit on for like the last like decade and a half, whether it's like corny Twitter jokes or like whatever just happened this year. And it's like like at the same, he produces quality music time after time, year after year. He's the only guy who is this extensive of a discography, and all of it is
That's
like
true.
pretty solid. Like none of it's
He hits you
perfect,
with a
but
lot of music year
a
after
lot of
year.
music. And like I feel like that's what you want out of an artist, especially like one that's as successful as Drake. Like
Hmm. If
he
he's your favorite artist, he delivers. Yeah,
every
that I can definitely give you that. If you love Drake, he's got stuff for you all the time. And like you're always wanting your favorite artist to release stuff, and he does that.
exactly, and it would be so easy for him, given how successful he is, to just not do that.
Hmm.
And this is the first year in the 2024 since I think like 2014 that he didn't release an album
Yeah.
or have a big major release. I mean, he had like those songs as part of the
Yeah.
beef, but this is the first time that's
Yeah.
happened in like a decade. And
Yeah.
so I think that you kind of felt that this year
Hmm.
too. Like when if Drake doesn't release, like you it doesn't feel like there's a big release. Like even
Hmm.
Kendrick released, I think he only sold like 300 something thousand
Okay.
records,
Yeah.
which like for a big rap album is not that many. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Especially not in an era where everybody is streaming constantly.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm excited to see what he releases. I think he'll have a lot to say, first of all. And I think when Drake is rapping, I think that's when he's at his best. Obviously, his melodic stuff is really good, but I'm looking forward to him making a point next time. So we'll see. That being said, all of the last like 5 minutes, a lot of glazing I just did. I admit that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Loyal
someone
fan,
had to
Dick
say it.
Rider.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Someone has to say it. Someone has to say it. That's all.
I can respect all the things that you said. I think you made good points there. So,
All right, well, I appreciate it. But yeah, that's all I got. So
alrighty. Well, that's been 2024, our recap. We went a little over, but it was 2 months.
yeah,
It was 2 months.
double
No, it was
episode.
just 1 month. It was 2 months and the entire year. So,
It's true.
anyways, we will
If you have recommendations on what we should listen to or
comment.
thoughts about what we said today, leave a comment,
Yes.
shoot us a message, leave a like,
Like,
subscribe.
subscribe, bell.
Um, but yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And who's watched any of our episodes this year, we appreciate it a lot. We have more to come. I
Yeah.
think our upload schedule has been pretty consistent, so I think we can be proud of that. So
Yeah. Yeah. And we're also not like, I think some people like to be bombarded with stuff, but like also quality over quantity, you know?
yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's what we've got for you. So, so
Exactly. So thanks again. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. See you next
yeah.
year. How about
Happy
that?
New Year.
Happy New Year.
All righty.
So